Welcome to this episode of the Doug Sandquist podcast. Where interested is interesting, and interesting people share their stories and build their biographies along the way. I'm your host, Doug Sandquist. I'm a dentist and a photographer, now a podcast host. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Doug Sandquist, and on Facebook, Doug Sandquist Photo. And you can join our email list by going to DougSandquistPodcast.com. And I do happen to sell photography prints once in a while at SandquistPhotography.com, SandquistPhotography.com. Check those out. And today's guest is Dr. Jerrold Diamond. Hey, Jerrold. Thanks for joining me today.
Doug, how are you, my man?
Good. And as with all of our guests, I don't have Jerrold's bio in front of me, and I haven't read it. But I will tell you that I met Jerrold. He's a fellow dentist as well. I mean, I'm on a dentist roll. I am a dentist, so I know lots of dentists. I met him down at Spear Education in Arizona, and I know that he is a dentist in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So you'll hear the little Canuck accent out of Jerrold. Yeah. But the real goal of this podcast is to discover Jerrold's real biography. You okay with that?
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. So to start off, I have a list of 10 quick and easy starter questions. There are no maybes here. Yes or no, or pick one.
Yeah.
So number one, gummy bears or M&Ms?
M&Ms.
All right. Sweet or salty?
Sweet.
Nice. Hot or cold?
Hot.
All right. And you live in Canada. Figure that. Go figure.
I'm cold enough, man. I need something warm.
Would you ever wear flip-flops to Disney World? Yes Absolutely. Or no?
Sure.
Sure? All right.
Yeah.
You're a flip-flop guy, huh?
You know what? Why not?
Yeah.
I think it's warm there, so I'm in.
All right. Are you an early riser or a night owl?
I'm a night owl.
All right. Cow or chicken?
Cow.
Short hair or long hair?
I think I can get away with both, but I'll say short.
Okay. Tattoos, yay or nay?
No.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Cake or pie?
Cake.
And the bonus question, sauerkraut, love it or hate it?
Love it.
All right, nice. That's a lot. I mean, I get a lot, most loves, but I've gotten a few hate-its with sauerkraut. That's an interesting one. It's people either seem to, they don't really have a meh about it, you know?
Yeah, it's just, it's not like I always have it, but if it's there, why not?
Yeah, why not? All right, so where were you born?
I was born in Calgary.
Calgary, all right. And what is your earliest childhood memory in Calgary? Or maybe it wasn't in Calgary.
Yeah, it's interesting. My earliest childhood memories, when I think about it, were probably my summers where we weren't in Calgary. We would leave Calgary during Stampede Week because, the Calgary Stampede was the whole city basically would shut down and become cowboy town. Mm-hmm. So we would go to a place called Fairmont Hot Springs, which was probably about a 3-hour drive. And we would go every summer for like the 10 days that the Stampede was on. And, it was kind of all kinds of fun there, like hot spring pools and trampolines and just outside and really nice place. And that's kind of where I think if you ask me about childhood memories, that's kind of my early childhood memories would be.
All right. So is that near Jasper, those hot springs up there?
No, it's actually...
Which hot springs are in Jasper?
Well,
Jasper
would more be like the Marietta Hot Springs. Fairmont was more interior BC, like the Kootenays.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So you'd be actually you'd go west of Calgary, kind of west of Banff and west of Lake Louise, and then head south.
I gotcha. Because I remember, like, when I was in 1979, I remember my family went on a trip up there. We went to some hot springs somewhere up there. I'm a little embarrassed that I can't remember where that was, but it was somewhere Lake Louise, Jasper, Banff. Yeah. I remember all sorts of. I remember those along that along that road up there. There's Are there hot springs up there? There's got to be a lot of them, I guess, right?
Yeah, I think there is some. I mean, I'm not familiar with all of them, but Banff has some, hot springs, and then I think there's a few other spots in the neighborhood. Fairmont was just because it was in BC, warmer.
Yeah, like let's get warmer, right?
Yeah, and it's always about being warm.
So how long would you spend there? Or you like spend like a month there or so, or a couple weeks? Or
Probably just go for 10 days or so.
Okay.
While the Stampede was on, we weren't really big cowboys, so we'd get out of Dodge.
Yeah, so when the Cowboys came, we are like, let's just kind of let's figure out what else to do. What else did you do during the? What else would you do during the summers when you weren't
I would go to when I got old enough. I would spend my summers at least a few weeks of the summer at camp as well. So if we were in Fairmont for 10 days, then I think later on I would spend maybe 2 or 3 weeks at camp.
Oh, that's cool.
And there was a camp that I spent a lot of time at even later on, like as a teenager, that was halfway between Edmonton and Calgary. So you'd get kids from both cities,
sides, yeah,
and even Saskatchewan coming. And so I spent a lot of summers out there.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what was school like? I mean, I live in Nevada, so I have no concept of like, cold going to school and stuff like that as a grade school kid. Did you really walk uphill in the snow both directions going to school, or is that your thing, or what?
Well, here probably
you hear those stories, right?
Yeah, I mean, my junior high and high school. So like 7, 8, 9 is junior high here. 10, 11, 12 is high school. We would have walked or ridden our bikes if it was nice enough, and they weren't far, but they were far enough in the winter that it was ugly. Kindergarten to grade 6, I kind of went to a private school, so I'd have a ride in the morning and picked up because it wasn't close.
Yeah.
So there wasn't as much problems with the environment getting there. But it's funny, like even now we live our lives really a lot of it indoors because even recess as a kid, it'd be hard to be outside because some days, for 4 months or 6 months of the year, it was too bloody cold.
Right. Yeah. I remember I had to go to Montreal for a meeting once, and I just, I'd never been there before. And then just seeing all of the underground malls and stuff. And I mean, it's just people are prepared to live underground there. It's kind of like Vegas, where you're prepared in the summertime to live indoors because of the heat. It's the same. It's kind of the same. It's kind of just reverse. It's just the same. Yeah. It's how we all kind of survive. It's not really no different.
No, the only difference is, look, we can put on more layers in the winter.
Yeah.
You got to be careful how many layers you take off there. There's still laws. Even in Nevada, you can't take everything off.
No, you can't, and it still doesn't matter because you're still hot. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So, the weather is just one of those things. I think Canadians, we think either it makes you tough or, I don't know. Some people might think we're stupid, but it's
right.
Where you're born.
Or you go to Florida.
The East Coast guys go to Florida. From where we are, you go to Arizona or you go to California.
That's true. You all want to come to America to get cold, get warmer, right?
Yeah.
Get away from the cold.
The snowbirds. That's you think of our friends to the south.
Yeah, I like that. So, did you get a job as a kid? Did you do anything like that? Did you ever have like early jobs and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, when I was, I think 16, which at the time I think maybe you could work, I don't know, like in some places earlier than that. But when I was 16, I got a job at there was a well-known department store in Western Canada called Woodward's, which was a big deal back then. It was kind of like the place. And so I actually worked in the toy department there from when I was 16. I bet you I worked there till I was probably, like 20.
Wow. Like little kids' toys or like video games or like
all that stuff.
All that stuff?
Yeah. It was like toys and pets. So, the odd time a bird would get loose and we'd chase the bird around the department store with a net trying to catch it, So, all kinds of fun like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I bet that was a blast. I had a friend of mine, he worked at the game department at Target, like when we were growing up. And I always thought that was really cool because he always got access to like the new video games, and like he actually knew when all the video games were coming out because he was like working in the toy department, So I was always a little bit jealous of the fact that he was like actually there, So
yeah, it was fun. I remember one of the funnest ones I remember was when Cabbage Patch Dolls came out.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I've never seen like people fighting before, but honestly, like you'd see people duking it out over a doll.
Crazy. And if you didn't get the right doll, I mean, Christmas was like ruined, right?
I guess, man. I you know, it was beyond me, but these things were, these things were like getting your hands on an N95 mask for us today.
Right.
You'd do anything to get one.
Yeah, people would spend whatever they could to. Yeah, it's a blast from the past of the Cabbage Patch Dolls. I mean, I vaguely remember my sister was a little bit into. I don't ever think she was actually into Cabbage Patch Kids, but I think just the wave. I mean, I think just being a kid back then, I think if you got one, that was pretty cool. I think there was some cool factor about that or whatever.
Yeah.
So growing up, was college kind of a big deal? Was that something that was like ingrained in you to go to college, or how'd you pick your college path? How'd that go?
I gotta say that there was always an expectation in my family that you would go to university. I don't think there was ever any pressure what you did, but the expectation was that you wanted to use your mind to create your path. My dad was a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She took care of us and the house, and I think there was just always the expectation. So I'm the youngest of three.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. When you ask that question, it's not like I ever remember having a discussion saying, right, this is what you do, but it was always just an expectation that was there.
Right. You went to, grade school, high school, and then there was always a path to go on to finish your education, and finishing that was going to college, which I think is,
and we were lucky. I mean, we were lucky that, my parents were of the mindset that, if you're going to college, we are taking care of those costs for you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
it's kind of a mutual assumption they were going to go and they were going to help you take care of it to get there.
Yeah. So it was just one of those things that, none of my siblings, we all went. I mean, my sister was a lawyer as well. My brother's a chartered accountant or a CPA. And so, there was nobody who sort of didn't go. So I don't know what would have happened if one of us said, no, not going.
Yeah.
But
it's an interesting, the reason I asked the question is because I think there's just for some reason, there's certain families or wherever that it's just like a known thing. And I don't really understand why that is, but it's not so much, I don't think it's, for some it could be pressure from other kids in the school. But I mean, not everyone has to go to college these days, but it's interesting how we all just kind of, most of the people I asked that question to, it's just kind of like just known that that's where I was going to go. That's what I was going to do. Like, it really wasn't like dad saying, you're going to go to this school and you're going to do this. It's just kind of like, you're going to go,
Yeah. I mean, I think that, when you have a role model that's gone that route and they've, been, in a sense successful in their life path. I think maybe in the early days, going to university was sort of like not a guarantee, but puts you much more likely to have a good opportunity to have a job, a well-paying job, and something that wasn't risky.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I think that we may have come around a bit, that people who go to technical school and, get a electrician's ticket or a plumbing ticket or those sort of things can obviously do very well as well. But in the old days, those things were sort of considered more blue collar or menial labor.
Right. Yeah. I get that.
So
yeah. And I think the technology world has pretty much changed a lot of that too. I mean, as far as, how much education do you need to be able to write code or to, so
come up with an app.
Yeah. So it's all, I think the world has changed a lot from when you and I grew up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm certainly older than you are, but for sure when I am that, this kind of stuff, it was a pretty rare thing that anybody would do those sort of almost computer type stuff back when we were kids.
Right.
Was
Yeah,
early.
and the notion that you could actually, use a computer back then to actually just make a living was just like, that was, you almost couldn't even think about that. I mean, that was the guys with the white shirts and the black, pants and I mean, I'm going to stereotype them because back then they were the geeks and nerds who
The
carried.
pocket protector.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't want to actually hang with those guys. I mean, it sounds horrible, but that's the truth back then. I mean,
Yeah.
they were like, and now they're like that, like normal,
Yeah, those are the guys who are killing it, man.
Yeah, I know. So how did you pick dentistry? How did that? What'd you go to college for? Did you go to college for dentistry, or did you go for something else?
Yeah, no, it's funny. I always seem to think that I wanted to do something medical related, and I never really loved the idea of being a physician. So I think I always wanted to go into dental school. I never applied to medicine or wanted to go that route. Law really never kind of was up my alley or in my eyesight. So, I went the sciences route and applied to dental school, got into dental school, and that's kind of just the way it went.
That's cool. So it was just like yeah. Did you have any fears about doing that, or is that just kind of like, or did you like? Well, the reason I asked that is like I actually had some fear that I could actually do the technical part of it, but I figured I would. But I was in the back of my mind, I kind of wondered, could I actually do the artistic part of it, or the building a tooth?
Yeah, it's interesting. Even back, I mean, I've been in practice. I graduated in '91, so we're close to 30 years ago, which kind of shocks me. But back then, look, the aesthetics wasn't the same. I don't know that it was as aesthetically driven then as it has become over the last even, I don't
10
know,
years,
10 or
yeah.
15 years,
Yeah.
I think the part about dentistry that I like is it's always evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of times people will say, even people who work in big companies or lawyers or whatever that I talk to, they say, yeah, it's so nice to be able to change what you do every, 5 years, 10 years, change companies, something like that. And it's sort of like, don't you get bored? And it's like, no, I don't get bored because, the technology that we get to play with every day is always evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And, if I think back to when I started, did I ever think that I'd be spending my days with a scanner scanning people's teeth and playing with things on a flat screen? It would be like, no, I mean, this is awesome.
Right. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think we actually have the opportunity to actually change the way we practice, the way our career works, virtually like every 5 years. I mean, it's if we don't want to, it changes for us, really.
Yeah, but you and
Maybe
I both.
10.
There's lots of guys that would be guys I've known for a long time, and they're still doing things the way they've always done it.
Yeah.
But if you choose to, you only get to see what you allow yourself to be exposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think some people just don't want to. I don't know why that is either. I don't know why some people strive to always look for something around the corner, and other people are just happy with where the room they're in.
Yeah, and both are okay. I'm not passing judgment. It's just sort of like, I think that as technology progresses, it's sort of like digital versus analog radiography. I mean, you can't really compare the two, but there's still a few guys out there using analog.
Yeah, it's true. They still think it's better for some reason.
Yeah, but there's also that whole thing with, the fact is it's a significant difference in dosing.
Right.
So, it's that age-old story. It depends how you want to practice.
Right. That's true. Yeah. So, so you got out of, got out at 91, and then where did you just start practicing in Edmonton, or where'd you go? Where was your first job?
Yeah, I did. I always thought I would have gone back to Calgary because my family was in Calgary. But I stayed in Edmonton, and an opportunity was there. So I joined a practice here. Basically, I made my life in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
And and Edmonton, when you're from Calgary, you know, that's just not something you do.
You don't, if you're from Calgary, you don't go to Edmonton. Is that,
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know about the cities, but I mean that.
Yeah. You know, Calgary is
it like LA and San Francisco kind of that, or do you know much about that? Or
I don't know about that one, but probably it's sort of like, you know, you're the line is drawn in the sand about which team you grew up following.
Yeah.
Whether it's hockey or football or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So like in LA, I mean, in San Francisco, if you're a Giants fan, in LA, you're a Dodger fan, and you know, there's battles. You know, it's probably about the same thing, I guess. Yeah. Maybe not. You know, has that changed?
You fight to the death over those teams, right?
Yeah. Has that changed in the end? Has that changed? Is that better? Is that lessened with the years? The rivalry?
No, you know what? I think the rivalry is still strong, and you know, they're really in Alberta, which is the province we're in. You know, you've got two cities that are both, you know, cities of just over 1 million people, you know, roughly, give or take. But you know, pretty strong provincial rivalry between the cities.
That's cool. Yeah. So do you ever wish that you had gone back to Calgary?
You know, look, Edmonton's been good to me. It's home. I mean, I can't complain. I think Edmonton has always been sort of the, you know, kind of use the analogy of the, you know, Edmonton might have always been what was considered to be a little bit more of the ugly sister. You know, Calgary's the one you hear about. Is closer to the Rocky Mountains. The Olympics were there.
Right.
It's a bigger downtown.
The Stampede, you get Banff an hour away.
Yeah,
I mean,
you know, you know, people say, "Oh yeah, I know Calgary," and you say, "You're from where? Is that near Calgary?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Edmonton is a nice city. It's just it's not quite as, let's say, it doesn't get as much hype.
Yeah.
So, you know, other than Wayne Gretzky, you know, who played for the Edmonton Oilers, people may not know where Edmonton was, but Edmonton's got a very nice river valley, and it's a nice city. It's not as you know, the capital is of the province is here, but we don't quite get the highs and the lows with the oil that Calgary does, because Calgary is where the head offices are.
Okay.
Edmonton is closer to where the actual oil comes out of the land up north, so we're gateway to the north. So it might be more considered more of a, in a sense, a blue collar city than Calgary.
I gotcha. A little. I mean, the much broader economic base maybe in Calgary, maybe.
Yeah.
With low, I mean, maybe mid-lower or whatever. I mean.
Yeah, and it's the government town in a sense too, right? So you have all the bureaucracy in a sense is here as well. So you know, that always carries on, even when the economy goes up and down, that bureaucracy never changes.
Right. So yeah, so you have the government there, which actually helps keep the economy kind of more stable. In
absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's cool. So yeah, so what types of hobbies have you been working on through school and your career?
You know, so when I think about it, I graduated here in 91. You know, I've always been a tennis player growing up. I spent a lot of time playing tennis as a kid. And so, you know, I've kind of carried on playing here. And again, where we are, we play indoors because of the climate. So
you ever play any you know, high school tennis or college tennis or professional tennis or anything like that?
No, you know, I probably play more tennis now than I did when I was younger. I would say probably even in the last 10 years, I've taken it a lot more seriously than I used to. One, I've always loved the game, but I just find now I've been able to prioritize it more. So I do that, and I road bike.
Oh, cool.
When the weather's good, or when I'm away somewhere, I road bike, which is nice because you know, you get to see the world differently on a bike than you do in a car or on a tour bus.
Yeah, get to go see other places.
Yeah, and so those are really my.
Have you done any destination travel, like bike rides and stuff, where like you'll go to some place and like do a bike ride and stuff like that, or like?
Yeah, we usually will, wherever city we're in, if it's a new city in particular, we'll we'll tour the city, but we'll also make sure that we do a bike tour of the city. So we've done them in Seattle. I've done them in Portland. I've done them in Paris. I've done them in London. So, it's kind of cool to see cities on a bike as opposed to doing them as a tourist.
Wow. So like, how long will those last? Like a couple hours, or, how will you...
3 or 4 hours on the bike.
Yeah. So you just like do a search and actually find out for a bike tour in the city, and they'll give you a bike and a helmet and say, we're going to take you around and give you lunch or something like that. And
yeah. And so we actually, one of the interesting ones we did, my brother and I did one together in New York, and we did Harlem and I'm trying to think where else, but we did Harlem on the bike, and it was really quite cool because we went into, one of the things they had organized was, on this cycle group, that we went into like a Baptist church. Mm-hmm. So, you got to see what went on back in the early days in Harlem in these Baptist, and they put on a show, man. It was,
wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually had never, I mean, I think I've seen them, but I hadn't, I've never done one, but that sounds like a cool.
It was Central Park in Harlem that we did, and it was great. But I mean, Seattle, Portland, they were all good. Paris was awesome. We saw stuff that we just didn't see doing some of the other tours we had done.
Right. Yeah. Because you can kind of get into different places, and it's a different pace because you're probably not going quite as fast, and there's all sorts of other things you can do. And
yeah. And London was awesome too, because, they take you by the palaces and through the parks, and it was neat. Yeah.
There's definitely other places you can go. That's cool. You often play tennis whenever you go on trips too, or do you kind of leave that for home?
If I can, I do. I usually take my racket wherever I go. Some places it's easier than others.
Yeah. Are you one that will need to have someone to play with, or will you just call up a club and say, "Hey, and we have a game"?
I usually, the way I do it is I take my racket, and then quite often, if I know I'm going somewhere, I'll try and arrange if there's a club around, or I'll usually do some investigation before I go, and I'll try and set up a match even with one of the pros while I'm there, because I play twice a week with a couple of the local pros at my club.
Yeah.
And so I set it up that way, and it's good. Like one of the best places that
I'll run you around for sure.
I was in Mallorca, which is the island where Nadal is in Spain. So it's all red clay, and they all, everybody there knows him. He's like a god. So, I remember playing in Mallorca with a guy, and, he obviously knew Nadal, and it was just the location was spectacular, playing on the red clay, which we don't really get in Canada.
Yeah.
It was great.
That's cool. Sounds like you do a fair bit of traveling too. I mean, how much time do you spend traveling too? Seems like a relatively significant hobby.
I guess. Maybe in the last 10 years. Not so much probably before, because, I was building my practice and all that sort of stuff. But, I sold part of my practice about 8 years ago now. And that allowed me more freedom to spend more time away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
what does that feel like?
It's worked out well for me. I can't lie. As you know, I've had associates in my office for the last 20 years, but, even it didn't have the same feeling. You always felt like, as the only owner in the practice, that you sort of had to be there more.
Mm-hmm. Like always there.
But when one of my associates who had been with me for a while approached me about 8 years ago and wanted to buy in, I hadn't really thought about it, but once I did, I thought, well, this should have a synergistic effect if it works out to everybody's advantage. And it has, and it allowed me the time to, spend more time away. So, probably for the last 6 years, I spend March in Palm Springs because the Indian Wells tennis is there, and I ride my bike, and March in Edmonton is miserable weather-wise.
You're done with winter, aren't you, in March? You're like, we're just done.
But I still come home to it. So, April usually isn't so much better. So, but at least it's a break.
Yeah.
And then for a number of those years, I also took, 3 weeks in June. And, we'd go to Europe sometimes. And again, I went to the French Open a couple times, and then piggybacked those trips with another kind of 10 days either in Italy or 10 days in Spain.
That's cool. See, I think that's one thing that's interesting about dentistry that maybe people don't really understand, is that we actually have the ability to kind of tailor our own lives. I mean, there's really you're the boss, and so you can kind of decide how you want to live your life. And I think that's actually one of the cool things about what we do.
Absolutely. And I don't know that I could have done those things if I didn't have other dentists with me who, obviously I trusted and were great.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So what would you consider as one of your greatest successes? Let me ask it another way. What's your greatest success?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think that I probably would break that out into areas. I mean, one of the things that obviously I'm guessing you get asked a lot is, your family and your kids are always, the focus of all of your attention in life. But from a professional standpoint, I think that the dentists that you come to either play a part in their lives and treating your patients and in a sense allow the growth that's allowed me to do the things that I wanted to do is probably one of my greatest successes.
Yeah. I most people do say family. And then most people, just like you did, kind of go into, they kind of start to think about, thoughtfully about all the things that they've actually have succeeded at. And I think, again, back to what we do, I mean, being able to be an active part in helping somebody's life, whether we change people's lives, that's up for debate, but some people's lives we do change. We hear about those stories all the time, but I think that's, being able to be there to actually help somebody along the path is definitely worth being successful, definitely worth being remembered for in some way.
Yeah. And I think, obviously, look, your staff play a part, but for me, the other dentists that I've, had with me over the years, and, especially the ones that are kind of continuing with me, and, we're growing our practice in a sense together, has really been a source of, I think, pride, and also responsibility for me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's something I haven't started that path yet. And I'm debating whether that's for me or not, but I can actually see the joy in, helping somebody else figure out their path along the way too. I think there's something to that for sure.
Yeah. And I mean,
personally,
part of it is because, look, a lot of times dentists are alone in practice.
Yeah.
So,
for sure. It becomes a lonely job. Yeah.
You've always had the camaraderie, with your dad there, which is awesome, which is unique. But I think that, dentists generally, sometimes you're in your own little bubble, and it's nice to have people to be there with.
It's definitely nice to share the experiences and the struggles with, for sure.
Absolutely.
Any significant regrets that you have?
I tend to be someone who's pretty positive. I'm not going to lie. But I guess from a professional point of view, I really didn't start doing any serious continuing education till I was probably, I didn't discover Spear until I was probably 17 years out. And I guess if I had a regret, it would be knowing what I know now. I wish I would have figured it out earlier. When you and I are, our gang of guys who are in the visiting faculty are there, I'm always amazed at the groups of people that are in our workshops. And you get some guys who are in their 60s and are doing this because, they're still loving it and want to know more. And then you get some guys who are 1 year out of dental school. And I always think to myself, man, those guys are really smart, because if
Mm-hmm.
I would have known then what I know now, I probably, it just would have opened up my eyes earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, I've thought that myself as well. I mean, then I also think the other side of it is I wonder if they're ready to hear it, but that isn't for me. That isn't a decision I made. I mean, I guess I look at it, I could see it as a regret too, but I also wonder, it's like what Carl Steinberg said. It's like sometimes the teacher doesn't appear until the student is ready. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's, I think all of us would look at it and say, yeah, I wish I had started earlier. I regret that I, didn't get this going sooner. But then I wonder, would I have actually been ready? Would I have actually been able to actually implement it and actually taken it on? And I guess those are the questions that kind of mull around in my head. I think we're all kind of ready, but it's definitely definitely something that I think to think about as a regret is definitely a something.
Well, you asked me if I had any regrets. I didn't think I should say no. I had to think of that for you.
I like that though. I like the discussion that it leads to.
I get a regret. That's it. That's all I got for you.
I like that. I mean, look, if you're going to live life, you should live with zero regrets. I mean, at some point, make your decisions and deal with them. I mean, that's
look, nobody's perfect. We all have made mistakes along the way, but at the end of the day, you got to live your life and you got to enjoy your life, because you only got so many turns around the sun.
That's it. And it's like, if it's worth regretting, then maybe you should make that decision. If you don't like the decision you made, make a different one. And just move on. That's
correct.
That's what it is. So what is what's your greatest fear?
I don't know that I have really any fears. Obviously, we all want to live a long, healthy life. So I guess my one fear, not that I spend a lot of time worrying about it, because, I pay attention to trying to make sure I live a reasonably healthy life, but it's, your fear of, getting some terrible disease, I guess, would be a fear, but it's not like I spend time thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it kind of piggybacks on the question above about regrets. I mean, if you're not really worried about making decisions that you're going to regret, you kind of don't really worry about fear. And I think the fear question is it's interesting from my standpoint. It's just an interesting because sometimes we fear different things, and I think people fear different things, and it's I appreciate the fact that people can live life without a whole lot of fear. I mean, ultimately, you play the hand that's dealt you and you kind of go on, That's
look, it's in these times, even like we're living now with this COVID-19, buddies of mine that I'm texting, and you can see some of them are like, they appear paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of like, you know what? The sun's going to rise tomorrow. Enjoy this time,
mm-hmm.
because when we do get back to normal, it's going to be like a tsunami of work.
Mm-hmm.
And you might at some point wish you had spent some of that time you had, whether it's a month or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, doing something you always wanted to do. So take advantage of it.
Right. That's kind of why I'm doing this little podcast thing here. I've always kind of wanted to do it, and I'm like, you know what? I have nothing else to do right now, so let's just start talking to people that I appreciate and find out what their stories are. Which is,
I think it's great.
Because ultimately, I've been using the words ultimately and mitigate like a lot these past couple of weeks, and it's literally driving me nuts. I've formed a new lexicon lately.
Yeah, we're all going to have a lot of new words in our vocabulary.
And I think you're right. I mean, I think it's very difficult for us go-getters and people who are self-employed business owners to just sit at home and not have anything to do. And I think one of my fears at this question is just, can I handle the workload that's going to be coming back to us when we're back? And then, that's something that we'll all just deal with. But I mean, it's going to be a problem we have to figure out. So what would your current self say to your younger self?
My current self, I think my current self would say to my younger self, enjoy your life, live your life to the fullest, don't have any regrets.
I like that. So did you actually feel that as you were growing up, was that like is that how you live your life? Like in your, can you remember like, being a 20-year-old and saying, you know what, I'm just gonna live the life that I want to live? Or did you feel like you had to like live up to some standard or something like that? Or
Yeah, no, I think that I probably was more, when you're younger and, you're even in the midst of thinking about, building a practice and, obligations and all that stuff. I don't think I was probably as laissez-faire or carefree in a sense as I would be now. But I also think that would have been wise words to my younger self, because you don't want to take everything too seriously. You don't want the weight of the world on your shoulders, because you can worry. And don't get me wrong, everybody's has their own worries, and that's fine. But you don't want worries to paralyze you, because the fact is, worry isn't really productive.
right.
At least I don't think now, as look, I'm going to be 55. I mean, the fact is, I think with age, you realize that, yeah, you can worry about stuff that really you don't want to worry about.
Yeah. Was worry a big thing for you ever, or you've always been able to like, I'm a worrier. So that's why I asked that question. Cause
I think
I feel
normal,
like yeah,
it's normal to worry about some stuff, but I don't think I was a big worrier.
Yeah.
But I don't like to worry, because I always just think things are going to work out.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been a worrier most of my life. And the last 5 years I've been really trying to like, it's just going to work out. I mean, that's, I don't really know what the workout is. And I think the sooner you can figure out that the uncertainty is always going to be certain, then you kind of just have to let the worry just kind of just fall away. Because at the end of the day, there's lots of things we have zero control over.
Right. I mean, look, we all, in a sense, to a certain extent, are probably, type A and a bit control freaks.
Yeah. Right.
At the end of the day, you can't control everything, right? And so, I mean, I've come to learn that, and in a sense, it's more fun.
Yeah. Like when you can do that. So what was it like hiring your first associate?
Well,
was there a lot of worry with that? I mean, because it's your baby, right? It has your name on the building, and here you are hiring somebody to actually, carry your name.
Yeah, you know what? it's funny. My first associate was with me for a couple of years, and then she went on to. We became quite good friends. She went on to open her own practice, because that's what dentists go to school for.
That's what you do. Yeah. We don't go to school to become dentists. We go to school to own a business, which they teach us nothing about.
Correct. It's funny, but true. I had good luck. I mean, I've probably had a dozen different people over 20 years, and the good ones, I mean, always want to move on and do their own thing. So it's a stepping stone. We all did it. Right.
Right.
And so, I was happy for her. And then the interesting thing about it is, her husband is also, in a sense, my orthodontist on my team.
Yeah.
I mean, I obviously work with a number of orthodontists, but he's kind of my go-to guy. He graduated dentistry a year after her. And so we sort of went through this sort of growth. He practiced for a year or two, a couple of years, then went back to ortho school. And she was doing her thing. And then she ended up selling her practice, spending time raising their kids. And just now, the kids are now kind of young teenagers. And so she now has come back and is working with me, a day a week in my office. And so we've kind of gone full circle, and, we're great friends. So it's really been an awesome thing just to see how their journey has gone.
Yeah. How you've actually helped, you've helped almost just, be an integral part in the journey of their life.
Yeah, I mean, it's been good because when I started in Spear, we weren't, as general dentists, allowed to run the Spear study club. So basically what happened was I came back and I said, to him, because he was an orthodontist, you need to start a study club.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have a study club. He runs it, but I feel like
you're like the leader. Yeah. You're like the partner.
Is good.
Yeah.
So, good.
That's cool. Yeah. So, what would you consider as some of your greatest inspirations, or what inspires you?
Well, I think, growing up, certainly my parents were an inspiration to me. I mean, my father was an inspiration because, he was a hard-working guy, and he was ethical and what we call a mensch, a good person.
Yeah.
So he was
he away from home a lot because he was working, or like, what was that like?
Not really. When I think back, actually, when I was old enough to realize it, I think he probably went into work at about, I don't know, 9:30 and was always home by, 5 sort of thing. So no, I mean, he was, he was at work during the day, but, he would come home and dinner was ready. And so, I mean, really, I realized that, I was lucky. It was a pretty traditional relationship in those days, or by today's standards, but we were lucky. My mom was there and, she took care of us, but ultimately, she was able to do that because of what he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So, I think that I had, good role models there. And really, I think for me, the other role models for me were when I got to Spear, it sort of changed my practice, how I looked at things, and the guys who I was lucky enough to spend time with there became friends, role models for me. You, Bob, Carl, right. And of course, really, I think Kevin and Darren, who were really my first two. They were the visiting faculty for me when I did my first workshops there.
Right. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think sometimes we go, or we seek out other training or go to meetings to learn from the people we're paying to get the information from, like for Spear or something like that. But I think ultimately we actually become better dentists and better humans from the relationships we build by the people that we meet down there. And I think that's actually sometimes that's actually the more beneficial thing than what you actually learn in some ways,
Yeah, well, you're going through, in a sense, you're kind of going through the same journey with people who are similar. Everybody's got their own version of the journey, but we're all there sort of for the same reason. We're all looking for more.
Yeah, what do you think that is? Why do you think that, especially dentists, for some reason, dentists kind of hit a wall? There's like a certain point in your world where you just like, everyone hears about the suicide numbers in dentistry, and everyone hears about the burnout in dentistry, and everyone hears about that. But for some reason, there's a point in time when the dentist kind of hits the wall there, where they have two places to go. They're either going to just go work at a tire shop, or stay miserable the way they are and have something else happen, or they decide to go change for the better. And I think I don't know why that is. I'm trying to figure that out.
Well, I don't know. Like I said to you, I think in a lot of other occupations, people will stay somewhere for a while and then they get sick of it and then they just quit and go to another company and they get a change of environment. I think for dentists, look, we invest a lot of time, energy, resources in learning our craft, but you get to a certain point. For some people never get there, but some people, like I think I went to Spear, I'd been in practice about 17 years, and it was sort of like there's got to be more to it than you've seen one MOD, you've seen them all, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it was October. I can tell you, I went with a buddy, and he was like, "You ever heard of this Spear guy?" And I'm like, "No, but it's in Phoenix, so that sounds good to me in October." And and we had talked about Coist, but that was in Seattle. And I was like, I'm not going to Seattle in October. So,
right.
I laughed because my decision was based on temperature and location. But like I said, my eyes kind of, I left that first seminar thinking, wow, how did I go 17 years with knowing as little as I know?
Right.
And don't get me wrong, by that point in time, I mean, look, I had a big, busy, successful practice, but it's the old story. You don't know what you don't know.
Right. And I think that, you don't know what you don't know. And I think I think sometimes you think have all the information until you're ready to actually, hear that there's potentially more.
Yeah, so I loved it. I mean, I spent a lot of time. I, did the curriculum quickly, and then, I've been going back ever since, as you know, mentoring, which I love doing.
Yeah. So what about the mentoring do you like? What part of that do you enjoy the most?
Well, look, I think that obviously being able to share the things that you've learned and share your journey with the other dentists who are there going through it is fun and awesome. But like you and I have already discussed, the even just seeing the other guys that you get to be with when you're visiting faculty there is huge for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we miss, again, I mean, you have a couple of associates, but I think lots of dentists work alone. And so they have their team around them, but they're just not business owners. They don't have the same day-to-day stuff that we have to deal with I talk to lots of dentists, and most of my listeners are probably dentists, but I mean, if you're not a dentist listening to this, I mean, I'm not complaining about this at all, but dentist is pretty much the CEO of the company. He is the marketing director of the company. He's the human resources person of the company, and he's the chief producer of the company. And it's one of the only professions where we pretty much we're pretty much in charge of all aspects of that company. Yeah, you can hire an office manager. Yeah, you can hire, somebody, whatever.
Yeah.
But in the end, we're still the ones who actually have to make the ultimate decisions.
Yeah, you got to wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, and so learning how to do all this stuff, back to our discussion about going to dental school to actually own a business. I mean, it's really is funny because none of us actually, get any of that training whatsoever, and we're all pretty much having to learn it on the fly. And so
right.
it's an interesting thing. So I think the value of postgraduate education is the fact that you can actually get around people and actually find people who are in the same boat that you are, that can actually help, lift you up and actually help carry you. Because if you don't have groups of people like that, if you don't have those, it just becomes a really lonely place.
Yeah, absolutely. And just even guys who have done some of the things that, like, before I went to Spear, I mean, we did very little photography, mm-hmm. right? And I mean, I always have said that the photography really, it opened my eyes. It really changed the way we practice.
Right. Because it makes
and I'm not a photographer, but we take the photos, and the value in the photos, to me, there isn't really much. There really, I mean, there's other things obviously that I've learned there that were obviously very important, but really the value of the photography was critical. You can't do a lot of the stuff that we do without photography.
Right. You can't communicate what's going on without photography well. It's not, it's not possible. And
right.
I mean, a dentist taking photography, I mean, it's almost mandatory in my book these days. I mean, if your dentist is not taking pictures of your teeth, you should probably ask him why not, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like I said,
or find one that does.
To me now, it's just one of those things that it's a no-brainer.
Right. Yeah. So what else? What other things keep you going? I mean, what other things keep you motivated to keep going and to keep getting better and all sorts of things?
Well, I'm kind of lucky. I practice 3 days a week now, so it gives me time to work on my tennis game. I play about 4 times a week. I'd like to be world champion over 85. Doug, the beauty of picking a number like that is that I'm really limiting my competition.
I have a patient who's 89 and he still pays the pro to go hit, and he actually has won a couple tournaments over 85. So
like I said, there's not that many guys in that draw, that.
Yeah, right.
So you just, it becomes a marathon.
So will you start playing any matches before 85? Or you're gonna just wait till 85? Will you start practicing match tennis before then, or you just wait another 30 years? What's your plan?
I'm not gonna lie to you. I take it pretty seriously. So when I'm on the court, it's I'm match ready, brother.
Are you?
Yeah.
So if you had to quit tomorrow, would you just play tennis all day, or what would you do?
I like road biking and playing tennis. So those are probably my two main sources of joy, other than obviously the people around me. But I don't know if I could play. I don't know if I could play all day, every day. It's kind of hard on the body.
Yeah.
Tennis. So, I think my balance right now is pretty good. I mean, I love doing what I do professionally and seeing patients. But yeah, I mean, I think that I could do it for another 20 years.
Mm-hmm. At this
Now,
pace.
Yeah, maybe in 10 years, I'm going to say, that's it, I'm done. Or, I mean, there's still lots of places I'd like to go and see. But, I think there's ways to do it and still, work and, I think being active is good for your brain. Being at work is good for your brain. And I think that, maybe at some point I'll go to 2 days a week, who knows? But I still think that if you have the mental capacity and your hands are still there, I think that it's good for you.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, my dad worked till he was 70, what was he, 75?
Yeah.
He could still cut a tooth like he was 40.
Yeah.
So there's no reason that you can't.
Yeah.
I would say, I think what's interesting, Jerrold, is that you've literally been able. What I really appreciate about you is that you've had a plan, whether you've known that plan or not. And I think you've been able to figure out along the way that if the plan wasn't going the right direction, that you would change it. But you've always kind of had a plan from your growing up to all the way where you're at now, and you still have a plan of where you're going to keep going. And I think there's lots of people who are living life without a plan, and I think that's I think if you're able to live the life with a plan, I think you can kind of figure it out a little bit easier. So if I had to give you a biography, I'd pretty much that's kind of where I'd go with that. I don't know if you will agree with that, but I think I think that's pretty. I think it's kind of succinct way of thinking about it.
Yeah, it sounds okay to me, man. Look, I figure, in the old days, people were like, hey, 55, I'm done, or 60, I'm done. And then they're going to I don't know, I'm going to get a Winnebago and go to Yuma or something like that. Right. I don't know. That is not for me.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I definitely think I mean, you're a little bit older than me. I understand that, but I think we're close enough in generations that I think, our generation's idea of retirement is far different than the ones coming before us.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I think the notion of us hitting 65 and, like you say, getting a Winnebago to go into Yuma is probably not going to happen for a majority of us. Not only we probably won't be able to, but we probably just don't even want to. So it's not even that we could even think about it. We could probably figure it out. We just don't want to. And I think the difference, though, in our generation, though, is we actually have tried to figure out how to try to enjoy it along the way a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's good because it's the old story. You never know what's going to happen. You don't know what your health's going to be. We just don't know. So you got to make sure, you enjoy the ride.
Mm-hmm. So what was it like taking off, deciding I'm just going to not work for a month? What was that like?
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to tell you that, like I said, for the last 6 years or so, we've kind of spent the month in Palm Springs just because of the tennis. And part of the impetus for that was this, my wife's parents had retired and spent a good portion of the winter in Indio, and which is in Palm Springs, basically. My parents had been doing that for quite some time. And I realized, look, my dad at the time was probably about 88 or 89 years old. My mother, who is still alive, she's 10 years younger. So, I realized that, I was probably on borrowed time. And when I'm here working, even though they were in Calgary and a 3-hour drive away, I didn't get there as often as I wanted to because of, life here.
Right.
So that month away would give me the opportunity to spend time really with my parents, and give my wife opportunity to be with her parents, who are significantly younger, time that you weren't going to get back.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, luckily, my dad lived to be about 93 and a half. So we celebrated his 90th birthday down there. And my siblings would usually come down for a portion of that time. They both live in Toronto. And so, you know what, really it worked out well. And because I knew that I had people at the office, I used to, for most of those years, I'd come back for like 3 or 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks in, because my Crown and Bridge turnaround time was normally on a 2-week cycle.
Right.
So I'd come back for a couple of days, put some crowns in, cut some crowns, and then go back. So I'd have a little thing. This year was really the only year that I was staying for the full month. And of course I didn't get to because of COVID-19.
COVID, right.
So I was still home after about 2 weeks.
Wow. Wow, that's cool. I mean, again, that comes back to the plan. I mean, just, seeing something there and being able to plan it. I mean, I think that's that's something that I think I could definitely benefit from planning a little bit more. I mean, I'm getting a lot better in the last 5 years. The last 5 or 6 years of my life has been a lot better because I've been planning it out at the beginning of the year and figuring out how I'm going to make it work. And when you put your year to a plan, I mean, non-COVID years, life,
Yes.
your year seems to go a lot better. You have things are spaced out. You have the way I have goals for when I'm not going to work, and so I work. If it's say 6 weeks, then I get a week off, or 2 months I get some time off, or then it makes it a lot more palatable for me.
Yeah, and you know what? You're fresher when you're back at the office. You feel better. Look, what we do is hard on the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
and
I think that breaks and stuff is good. Absolutely. And when there's other guys there to take care of things, because you've invested the time in them.
Right.
Really, I've been lucky. I mean, I could go away for that time. I come back and there's nothing on my desk.
Right. It's all done.
There's nothing done. There's no fires for me to have to put out.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
So, yeah, I mean, I've been lucky. And that time, really, those years down there, whether it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks that I'd get to spend with my parents down there, those are cherished moments for me late in life. Because, like I said, my dad was basically, 90 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you don't get this time. No, you can't get it back, right? You don't get it back.
Yeah. That's cool. So did he, is he still with us?
No, he passed away on the 27th of December basically last. Okay. Not this past December, the year before.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was 93, and really, I mean, I was lucky. I mean, he was a healthy guy. He, basically, he practiced law until he was in his early 80s. Wow. From home, and he was. Basically didn't take a pill in his life till he was about 85. So, he had a good run.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason to say that you're not going to be there doing the same thing yourself.
Yeah. Look, I mean, that's one thing you don't get to pick no matter what is your genes, right?
No, you don't. That's right.
So, luckily my mother, who'll be 85, is in good health, and look, he had a good run. So yeah, man, I, touch wood, you hope that you get their genes.
Yeah. That's cool. So, Jerrold, I really appreciated this time. I mean, I probably have a slew of other questions that I could probably ask you, but I mean, might be putting people to sleep basically if I keep asking them roundabout questions. But
we could chat another time offline.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate getting a little bit better. I mean, I keep on coming back to the idea of like the plan. I mean, I think that's what I got out of this chat, is that you've kind of figured out that, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to get a plan, and I'm going to make sure it keeps going. I mean, that may sound cliche, but I mean, I think I think not everybody has figured that out along the way. And I think that's pretty cool that you figured it out that, hey, maybe if I plan for this, I can actually do that, which is pretty cool.
Well, we're enjoying the ride. That's for sure.
That's right. So, hey, survive COVID, man, and I will get back to work one of these days. And I really appreciate the time.
I hope to see you in August if it happens.
I know. I hope to see you soon. And if not, we'll chat again sometime, and maybe we'll get you back on the podcast to talk about something else someday.
Okay, brother. Nice talking to you.
Yep, for sure.
Ciao.
So,